Welcome to our daily Forex market analysis call, and this is in preparation for trading on October 1st, 2018. Just a quick disclaimer here before we get started. This is for educational purposes only. Trading is a risky business, so please be careful with your money. As usual, we'll start off by taking a look at our calendar here. So coming up, so today we had PMI numbers for the pound here, positive numbers, and then we had manufacturing PMI data. Coming up here, we do have monetary base year-over-year numbers for Japan, but on Tuesday, important thing here will be overnight, we have RBA rate statement. We talked about this over the weekend. No changes expected at this point, but the commentary will make a difference. But in the London session, or even in the US session, not a ton of data coming out, red data coming out. We do have FOMC members speaking here, and then we have Fed Chair Powell speaking. Again, when the central bankers are speaking, it does make a difference. So keep an eye on that. So overall, not a ton of data coming up for tomorrow. So let's move on to our charts here. Okay, so for euro here, we are seeing a decline. We saw price move lower here, so we have seen a drop in the euro dollar here. However, we have not seen a break of this yet. So based on the daily candle close, the bias is to the downside. Now, if you were to look at the daily candle here, so we see that price just basically traded in this range here. So price had come down, pushed back up, and then it just traded within this range. So for tomorrow here, bias is to the downside, and the next target here would be 1.1520, and then 1.1480 level will be the next target here. So those are the two targets. Now, in this case, for price to continue now, we do need to see a clear break of this. So we need to see a break and then potentially a pullback and then another drop like this. However, what can happen is what we saw here. So that's something we have to be careful with in case price does one of those. In that case, I would look for price to react at this 1.1620 level here. Overall, though, bias is to the downside, and I'm looking for price to drop 1.1520, and then 1.1480 will be the two targets to the downside for euro dollar. Pound dollar here. A pound dollar was interesting today. We did see that move up in the British pound earlier, but it has closed with a doji. So we have a large pin to the upside here that suggests that price is likely to drop. So if we were to look at the 1 hour chart, we see that price pushed up and then has dropped from there. So it wasn't able to really hold the support resistance level here, or wasn't able to hold the move to the upside, and we saw this inefficiency get filled. So right now it looks bearish. So I would look for a price to drop here. And in terms of our target here, the next target, well, the first target will be the bottom here. So we do need to, again, see a clear break of the low here for it to continue to the downside. Bias is to the downside. And we could see a pullback, though, either into 1.3080 level or 1.3080 is a good level. Where are we? Or just into this pivot point level, kind of around this area here, back into our 1.3050 level. So that's a good pullback level here as well. But again, do need to see a clear break. Otherwise, though, bias is to the downside. Next target that we are looking for would be 1.2980, and then back into a 1.2950 level. So bias is to the downside, 1.2980 and then 1.2950 will be the targets to the downside for pound dollar. Aussie dollar here. Aussie dollar is interesting. We do have RBA rate statement coming out, so that will have an impact on Aussie here, but overall a bias is to the downside. So price is maintaining the support resistance level here. And as long as price stays below this level, below 0.7250 level, I'm looking for price to drop. Now, with the RBA statement, it could be positive, and if the statement is positive, we could see the price move up higher. However, I am not hugely bullish on Australian dollars. So I would look for a move into 0.70 to 60 level, or potentially it could go all the way into the high, but I would be looking for a reversal here, even if the RBA statement does push this higher, unless something drastic happens, like they change the interest rate. In that case, it's not coming back. But other than that, if it gets pushed up, sometimes we do see this RBA statement comes out and gets pushed up, and then we see the reversal of that move. So I would be looking for that. Target here would be 0.7150 to the downside, back into these pins to the downside. So bias is bearish for Aussie dollar. New Zealand dollar here, this one has also stayed below this 0.6630 level, this previous support resistance. It wasn't able to break the high, so bias is to the downside. And the next target would be 0.6570 level, and potentially all the way into 0.6540 level. So bearish bias for New Zealand dollar as well. Dollar CAD, this one was interesting. And the reason we see this big gap here, so right now it's gapped to the downside on the weekend. And the reason for that was because US and Canada signed the trade agreement. It's not called NAFTA anymore. There's a new name for it, but they were able to sign the trade agreement. And as a result of that, that is positive for Canadian dollar, because Canada is a big export economy. And as a result of that, a trade agreement is very, very important for Canada. And because that trade agreement was signed, we saw this drop now. So as a result of that, the bias is to the downside. So this big gap to the downside. Looking at the 1 hour, we can see price just dropped. It did try to go back up, but it has held its own to the downside. So bias for this one is bearish. Next target for dollar CAD would be 1.2740 to the downside. So bearish bias for dollar CAD as well. Euro pound here, the daily candle close here is bearish. So it has slowly been coming down. We had talked about this filling this inefficiency, price filling this inefficiency. It has now been filled, but overall bias still remains to the downside. Next target would be 88.50 level here. So looking for price to drop further, 0.8850 will be the target for euro pound.